sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
Welcome to Rabbi on the Sidelines. This is Rabbi Erez Sherman from Sinai Temple in Los Angeles. This is the podcast where we speak about the intersection of faith and sports. We say we don't talk about the trade or the box score or the trade deadline, but we talk about what's in our heart and our soul. This week we are joined by an amazing author, Lee Schwartz, the author of Raising Giants, My Extraordinary Journey with Two NFL Sons. Not only two sons in the NFL, but Jewish sons in the NFL, right here from Los Angeles. An amazing journey of raising two, that we like to call on this show, mensch. We all know what that means here. And this is very exciting because we have our live podcast with our Sinai Akib Academy fifth graders who just finished their podcast unit and are watching this live taping right here. Lee, it is great to have you back, not on the show, but at Sinai Temple, because a couple of years ago, we had the Schwartz brothers about their book, Eat My Schwartz, as we had a little NFL training combine in our social hall. We did. Which, with some Jeff's hot dogs, which was actually the best part as well. So first, before we begin, we have to give a shout out to Joel Weinstein, who is the connection, the shidduch, between you and Sinai Temple, and it was wonderful to see, just in the first few paragraphs, a shout out to Joel Weinstein, the past president of Sinai Temple, for your friendship as well. So, two Jewish sons in the NFL, it doesn't happen very often, and in fact, you and your wife, you write in the book, it didn't think it could happen. And so, how did it happen, and when did you realize that this was a reality?
Well, first of all, in terms of Jewish athletes, my boys were the first two Jewish brothers to play in 90 years in the NFL. So we didn't know until later in their athletic careers that there was an opportunity here. But they were mutant children from the beginning. Came out of the womb in the 95th percentile and just continued to grow. And so there was a thought that maybe there would be opportunity, but we really didn't know until other people started to say to us, coaches particularly, you know, they have an opportunity to go to the next level. And we just followed that path and tried to guide them towards that direction, and ultimately it came to pass.
And so I love what you write, especially advice for young kids and also parents, that even though football, because of their size, might have been their obvious path, you allowed them to experiment in different sports until you realized that there weren't 300-pound pitchers and it wasn't going to work on the basketball court. But what was the wisdom that you did give them? Try everything and don't just focus on one thing in order to really see what sticks.
That came from personal experience. When I was young, I was also taller than everybody else. 6th to 9th grade basketball teams, I was the tallest. And I had my sights set on maybe playing in college. And then my growth plate shut down, and after 9th grade, I didn't grow. And if I didn't have another sport to turn to, which was baseball, I would have been very disappointed. So I knew then with my children, I wanted them to be able to experience whatever they wanted and however they wanted to do it. I didn't play football because my Jewish mother said, you're gonna get hurt, and so I didn't play.
We do flag football here at Sinai Akiva.
Yeah. The boys started playing sports early, but football was not an option for them for two reasons. One, they actually were just too heavy to play Pop Warner football at the time. But more importantly, Pop Warner football would have been at the time that they were bar mitzvahed. And it was a decision between bar mitzvah lessons and the demands of Pop Warner, and the bar mitzvah lessons won out.
Who made that decision?
We did as parents. And I don't think they were that disappointed, but we knew that that was more important for them in their life to pursue. And then with playing multiple sports, I firmly believe that there's advantages. If you play basketball, the footwork that you have to learn to play basketball translates particularly to my kids and their offensive line, because there's a lot of choreograph going on. And the same in baseball, your hand-eye coordination will translate actually to the football field, because as a lineman, you really have to know where to position your hands, how to position your body, and that hand-eye coordination really makes a difference.
I know we have some soccer players here, but soccer wasn't their thing, I saw.
No, soccer, we tried it one time, and Jeffrey didn't really care for it, but a life lesson out of it because he wanted to quit. And we as parents said, no, you signed up for it, you made a commitment to do it, and you have to go through with it. But we realized that wasn't going to be his sport.
So every child wants to play a professional sport. Every parent dreams of their child playing a professional sport. But it wasn't necessarily until later in their high school career that they even thought that they could play in college, and not just a small college, but Division I, Pac-12 of blessed memory, now the Big Ten. At what point did you realize, or did somebody else say, hey, Lee, your son has a talent that can take them to the next level?
In high school, the college coaches were saying early in Jeffrey's sophomore year, I think, maybe junior year, that, well, you know what, he does have talent, and I think he has an opportunity to move on. For Mitchell, frankly, he's a better athlete. I say that in the book. Jeffrey will admit to it. And so we knew earlier on that he had a better opportunity to play, at least at college. And then in college, his first season as a freshman, a redshirt freshman, he was playing in a game which was attended by a former offensive lineman of quite renown. And he saw Mitchell on the field playing, and he turned to his friend at the time and said, that kid's going to the NFL. He looked at his footwork, he looked at how he handled himself on the field, and he truly felt that Mitchell had an opportunity to move on.
And so what was it like? You didn't miss a game. High school at Palisades High School right here, which of course had a lot of destruction this past year, and we hope and pray for that community to heal and bring their sports back as a healing process. But then they go to Oregon and they go to Cal. What was it like watching your sons on a bigger stage than just a high school stadium where people are cheering for them, and we'll talk in a moment, stadiums and sanctuaries?
It was rather surreal to look out on the field and see them down there and playing, not just on the sidelines, but actually on the field playing. Culminated with the Super Bowl that we attended, which was the last game we attended of Mitchell's in 2020 in Miami, when the Chiefs beat the 49ers. And consistently through the game, my wife and I would pinch each other and say, are we really here? Is this really a Super Bowl that we're attending?
I want to say for that, as much as you were pinching yourself, I know so many Jews who were watching that game, seeing Schwartz written on the back, the pride that they were carrying, not just of the Chiefs, but also of the people.
That's right. That's right. And they carried that proudly their entire time.
And so let's talk about stadiums and sanctuaries, because I love that chapter in the book where you went to all different types of stadiums, obviously Pali High here, but huge college stadiums like the Big House in Michigan, which is 107,000, to the Horseshoe, to Oregon, to Cal. What is it about a stadium? It's just a building, but that gives it an energy and a feel that you just sort of can't describe until you're there.
I think a lot of it has to do with history. When I went to Green Bay and went to Lambeau Field, which is one of the most well-known stadiums around, and I looked around the field and saw the Ring of Honor with names of players that I watched growing up, there's a specialness to that. There's really something unique about it. Or, as you mentioned, the Horseshoe or the Big House, I watched those games from home for years, and now I'm sitting in that stadium with 107,000 other people. Or you go to the Horseshoe in Ohio, and you see the band dot the I at the end of their performance. That's something really special. And so, you know, it's similar to going to synagogues. We went to numerous synagogues around the country, and I've said to my wife, and she agreed, each one was physically different, but once you walked in the door and once services started, it was just as if I was still in my home synagogue, which is Adat Shalom. You just felt the commonality of being there and the prayer, and everybody's doing the same thing that you're very familiar with.
I love that the fact that it was football that in fact brought you to those synagogues around the country and also around the world. And I'm thinking maybe we should have a Ring of Honor here, right? Moses, Aaron, David, Joseph, Sarah. So they deserve it as well as the Packers and the Giants.
Unfortunately, we were able to attend some of those services with Jeffrey. And the game would be scheduled such that he could attend the service, the high holiday service, and he would come with us, and that was a special part of it as well.
And you talk about a little in the book the tension sometimes between high holidays, for instance, and faith in sports, and sort of the Sandy Koufax syndrome versus the NFL. Maybe share a little about that. Maybe not the rabbinic answer, but the answer that that happened on the field.
Yes. So there was a year when Jeffrey was playing for the New York Giants where one of the games landed on the high holidays. And a rabbi out of New Jersey after Jeffrey announced that he would be playing, called him out for doing that and wanted Jeffrey to handle it differently and wished that he could have a Sandy Koufax moment through Jeffrey. For those unaware, Sandy Koufax played for Los Angeles Dodgers, and in 1965, the first game of the World Series that year landed on Yom Kippur, and Sandy Koufax took the day off. The difference between Sandy Koufax and Jeffrey Schwartz is immense. Sandy was the best pitcher in baseball. No one was going to tell him that he had to play when he chose not to. And the next night there was another game. So Sandy did not play the first night. The starting pitcher that night was a guy named Don Drysdale, who was the second best pitcher that year. So you're not missing much by going from Koufax to Drysdale. But Drysdale had a horrible, horrible day, and Walt Alston, the coach, had to come out and pull him out of the game. And Drysdale's response to Alston was, I bet you bet I was Jewish. Meaning if I was Jewish, I wouldn't have been out here to play, and so therefore we wouldn't be losing the game. But it's a big difference. Jeffrey missing a game could be consequential. Miss one game and potentially your replacement stays in. And it can be perceived as you're not being committed to your team. So there was always this conflict going on as to what to do and how to do it from the religious perspective, but also from the perspective of his job.
But there were times in the locker room, you speak about in the book, that their Jewish identities did come out in ways that people might not have even met a Jew before, no less a Jewish athlete. And maybe share that Thanksgiving story.
Yes.
Because I thought it's a beautiful way to understand Jewish identity, American identity, and the sports world.
Jeffrey never had a problem talking about his faith. He was always happy to talk about it, open to talk about his faith and learn about others and so forth. And one day, I think in the lunchroom, he was talking to one of his teammates, and they were talking about their respective holidays. And Jeffrey was talking about Pesach and the high holidays and Hanukkah. And
I just think that's so cool, by the way, because we watch the games on Sundays at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. or growing up at 1 and 4 p.m. on the East Coast. And you don't just imagine these amazing NFL people sitting around speaking about Pesach and Hanukkah and Purim. So the fact that it does, I think, number one, is just miraculous as well.
Yeah. So that was the conversation. But towards the end of this conversation, very sincerely, from what I understand, the teammates said to Jeffrey, so do you celebrate Thanksgiving? And Jeffrey looked at him and said, well, bro, that's an American holiday, so of course I celebrate it. So didn't know that it was not a Jewish holiday. And that's some of the things that Jeffrey tried to explain to his teammates about his religion and the differences and so forth.
And what does it mean to have an NFL platform, right? I have a rabbinic platform, but I'm not speaking to 100,000 people in a stadium or in a locker room that has millions and millions. What is the responsibility of an NFL player to use their platform correctly and sometimes justly?
I think it gives them an opportunity to stand for, to speak to what they stand for. There have been several instances where there have been issues related to a person's reaction or commentary about the Holocaust, for instance. And the boys have stood up and talked about how wrong that was and how they should have better handled that. Jeffrey had an instance in Oregon where a teammate in a summer camp year-end event told a joke about the Holocaust, and everybody in the room just looked around like, are you kidding me? Because they knew Jeffrey was Jewish. And I thought Jeffrey handled it extraordinarily well. He went up to him and said, this isn't right, no matter what the forum is. It turned out he was from the South, 17,000 population, the city he grew up in, and he claimed he knew no different. Mm-hmm. And Jeffrey tried to teach him about that episode and that it's not appropriate, and not a bad word was spoken after that.
So moments of education that allow people to change in their views, perhaps because of ignorance. Actually, I sat right here with Myers Leonard, former NBA player, after he made an anti-Semitic comment. But when he came here and he saw the children in Cone Chapel, he began to cry, and he said that my biggest mistake was my greatest blessing. And I think if that, if sports allows those moments of mistakes to turn into blessings, which I think we all do on the field and court, then sports is absolutely a thing that we need in our lives.
It provides a lot of opportunity. To Sean Jackson, you may remember that
Yes.
episode where he came out and said some things that were inappropriate about the Holocaust, and both Jeffrey and Mitchell called him out for it. Mitchell was actually interviewed on CNN by Don Lemon about it, and it turned out that I think Jackson learned a lesson. He met with a Holocaust survivor, spent some time with him, was invited to go to Israel to tour, but he didn't do that, I don't believe. But it was an educational opportunity for him and everybody else who would listen to that.
And so you mentioned Israel. Right now, literally right now, Jake Retzlaff from BYU, now they say BYU, because the quarterback of BYU, a Church of Latter-day Saints university, is Jewish. And right now, with Athletes for Israel, he is in Jerusalem with non-Jewish captains of the BYU football team. Your thoughts on that in terms of how Israel is being a piece of this, because through sports, there's different opportunities that people can learn about each other?
It's great. It's universal, and I'm happy to hear that that's what's being done. I know that Israel has their own football league, the American, what's it called? Israel Football in America, and they're trying to promote their sport. And if Jay can help out to do that, that's wonderful.
And so I want to go to something that I know you want to read in the book, because all these stories are beautiful about learning and education, but sometimes people say something that you cannot control. And one of those was said by Stephen A. Smith, who's a commentator on ESPN, and maybe share that story and how it was difficult for your sons to hear that and how that played out in real life.
Sure. And I would say to you that it was more difficult for me to hear
Interesting.
than it was for them. I heard it live. I don't know if Jeffrey actually did. But let me provide a little bit of background. The Los Angeles Rams were playing against the Cincinnati Bengals in a scrimmage during preseason, and a fight broke out. And one of the Ram players took off his helmet and started swinging the helmet against his foe. Let me read to you real quickly what the NFL rule book says about that. And it says very directly, a player must not use a helmet that is no longer worn by anyone as a weapon to strike, swing out, or throw at an opponent.
Sounds pretty clear.
Right? I don't think there's anything else to be said about that. So in response to this, Jeffrey tweeted, he's an active social media person, and he wrote, fights happen, we know that and accept it. However, swinging a helmet is out of control and dangerous. He should be suspended. With those words, I dare anybody to find any racist tone to those words. Yet, Stephen A. Smith on an ESPN show called First Take had the following to say. When you get white analysts talking that way and using that language about black dudes, he never mentioned black dudes at all, that's another level. And that's why I appreciate RC, who was a fellow panelist that day, bringing that up. I'm not accusing any analyst of racism or anything like that. I'm just telling them how we take it. Now what I want to do, if I'm looking at whoever said that tweet, sent that tweet out, I forget his name, it was Schwartz or whomever. And then he went on to finish up by saying that he'd like to see him say the same thing about a white dude that was involved in that. I'm sorry, but in my world, when someone refers to my last name in that kind of context, I could construe it as being anti-Semitic. And he's talking about racism where nothing was said about racism. I wish Stephen A. would follow his own advice, where he talked about LeBron James confronting him in a recent Laker game, because Stephen A. had said some things about Bronny, his son, that LeBron took exception to. And when that got into the public domain and reported, Stephen A. said, well, I wish he could have, like a man, taken it behind the scenes and talked to me about it. Well, I would say the same to him. Why didn't you talk to Jeffrey? You could have easily gotten in touch with him if you had an issue about this, as opposed to putting it out on First Take in front of the entire public.
So was there any outreach after, or that's sort of...
Nothing
that
at
was
all.
it?
Jeffrey
Nothing.
just let it go, water off his back, and didn't want to take any action about it.
And so let's go to a more positive experience, which was the Super Bowl. Because yes, you can have a child in the NFL. Yes, they can start in the NFL. Yes, they can make the playoffs. Yes, they can get to the Super Bowl, but not many people actually win the Super Bowl. That percentage just keeps going point. As a parent who describes the experience getting to Miami with 2 weeks, so you had to fly to Charlotte 12 hours because the 90 minutes, et cetera. I read every single word in this book, and I was like falling off my seat. I wanted to be in that car. What is that like when you've basically reached the pinnacle of athletic success, knowing, and I also want to share this, or you share this with us, yes, the quarterback gets a lot of the press, but it's actually your son who's making sure that the quarterback can do what they're doing. Talk about the role of a lineman in the NFL and the credit that they do not get.
That's very true. The football is entertainment.
Yes.
We all know. It's not a game, it's entertainment, it's business. And so from that perspective, I understand why the likes of Patrick Mahomes gets all the attention, or the other major quarterbacks, or the running backs. Without an offensive line, they can't do any of it. And that was proven in the subsequent Super Bowl appearances by the Chiefs when they lost to the New England Patriots, and this last year they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles.
I'm an Eagles
fan. They lost
so.
because they didn't have a good offensive line. And I think that doesn't get mentioned enough about the importance of those 5 guys in front of the quarterback, or in front of the running back, or even the wide receivers get the ball thrown to them because the quarterback has time for the throw to be made.
And as I say, it's not about the box score, right? But it's actually about the quality of the person doing the action. And I think it's a beautiful life lesson as well, right? It's not the person shouting the loudest or yelling the most, but rather it's the person sometimes quiet in the back, or in this case, in the front, literally moving the pile forward so that you can get to the end zone.
Correct. You're not going to find offensive linemen as a general ilk be boastful. They go about their business, they know what their responsibilities are, and they handle it accordingly. But they just do not get the attention that they should. I think it's changing a little bit as the game has progressed. It used to be the defensive linemen got more attention. Now the offensive linemen tend to, and they also get paid a little bit better than they used to. But I still think they, a lot of times, play in anonymity.
And so what is that Super Bowl experience like as a parent? It only happened once in that career, but it did happen. Take us through that weekend.
The word that keeps coming up is surreal. It's like, this is a dream. Once they got into the NFL, we dreamt that it might happen. We used to go to a friend's house for a Super Bowl party that I went to for 30, 40 years consecutively. And
it was Dave, right?
Pardon me?
Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
Yes,
yeah,
and
his wife Phyllis. And unfortunately, Dave passed away, but Phyllis continued with the activity. And I was given special dispensation by the Riley family. The only way I could miss a Super Bowl party was if one of the boys was in the Super Bowl. And so Mitchell goes to the Super Bowl, and they say, good, go have fun. As it turns out, they decorated their house with Mitchell memorabilia and paraphernalia and whatnot. And they actually had me call them, because I was responsible year after year for telling Phyllis when to put up the lasagna so it'd be prepared for halftime. And I still had to do that for her while I was
While you're at the game?
While I was at Miami, yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then you said your favorite scene is seeing Mitchell with confetti flying down. It sounds like almost like a bar mitzvah montage moment just a couple years after.
Yeah, that was extraordinary, but actually more so was I was fortunately able to get on the field after the game.
Wow.
And I typically don't couch things this way, but I really felt like somebody was looking over me when you look at the total instance and how I got on the field. But I did get on there. And once I got on the field, I was looking for Mitchell through all the confetti dropping and all the people on there, and I found him and was able to share a moment with him after the Lombardi Trophy, which is given to the winning team by the commissioner, was given to the owner. Again, it's passed to the head coach, and then it's passed to the entire team one by one. I've got a picture of me and Mitchell with the Lombardi Trophy in between us.
Wow.
The real Lombardi Trophy.
The real one.
The real one.
And when you have that moment of celebration, what's next? How do you surpass that? How do these players do it again and repeat to that level of excellence?
Well, once you taste it, you want it more. And then if you've got the team around you, look at the Chiefs particularly. They won that one, and then they've been to many others after that because the organization has set the team up to be that successful. But once you get the taste for it, you want to get there, and you don't want to experience the other side of the coin.
That's interesting, that it's easy being a loser, right? Because and I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but you lose, you don't really understand the idea of winning, but when you win, you want more, and it's hard there's never enough if you wish. It's sort of a Dayenu moment.
True, but I would say to you that the losing team then has more motivation to come back again and try it and win this time. Because the difference between the two is enormous. We were at the hotel after the game to the party afterwards. There were 1,000 people there. There were well-known rap artists entertaining. I couldn't imagine going to a party, which every team has, as the losing team.
No, that's true. That's true. Talk a little about the influence of I believe your father. You mentioned the Schwartz grandfather sort of appearing here and there, and what that meant in this space of Lador Vador from generation to generation.
Well, he taught me what I know. And he was a butcher. He worked behind the counter. Back then you didn't have automation, so he was behind the counter all day long. Sometimes his shift started at 12 and ended at 8 in the evening. And my dad made a beeline to our games, whether basketball games, baseball games, skipped dinner, skipped whatever else, to show up so that he could watch us. And I remember once when I was having some problems on the basketball court, we had a little thing between us as a way of him saying, "You'll get over it, don't worry about it." Remember The Sting, the movie The Sting? And where, I forget which actor, but went like this to say everything will be okay, whether it was Robert Redford or Paul Newman. Well, that's what my father did to me during the games. When I was struggling, I would look up to him, and he did that. And so I learned from him how important it was to be involved. He was out there in the front yard catching for me when I was trying to be a pitcher. And like I said, he came to all the games and gave me encouragement. And that's what I picked up and tried to transfer to the kids.
So was there a Sting moment from you to the boys when they also maybe had challenges and you said everything will be okay?
Yeah, there were along the way. One that comes to mind is the day Jeffrey, he was a free agent and had to, and it was going through free agency. It was his wedding day.
Oh, wow.
And that was the first day of free agency. His agent was in the house, and at 9 o'clock, free agency opened up, and the calls started coming in to the agent for interest with Jeffrey. And so the agent and Jeffrey went into the living room to talk by themselves, and I let them go. A little bit later, Jeffrey says, "Can you come in? I want to talk to you." So they share with me what's going on, and they had about 6 or 7 opportunities. And I said to Jeffrey, "So tell me, which one are you looking at?" And he said, "The one that's paying me more money." And I looked at him and I said, "Time out." I said, "Maybe you need to look at this a little bit differently. I want you to list all the things that are important to you about going to a team. And then I want you to put a number to those as to what's most important. And then I want you to look at each offer and each team and make a correlation between each team and what they offer." And it turned out he didn't go to the team with the most money. Well, actually, he might have, but his decision wasn't based on the money. It was based on the overall concept of the coaching staff, the city he was going to play in, the history of the team, the opportunity available to him, and then, of course, money.
So it's the full package of where you want to go, which is how we should make those decisions in our own lives as well.
Exactly.
So I want to ask 2 last questions. The first is about faith, because you asked me, well, what do you mean by faith? And I said, well, I use the term loosely when I said, is there faith in football? So after sort of my loose definition, what aspects of faith have you seen on the gridiron or off of it as well as a football player?
Yeah, there definitely is faith in football. I think if people watch the games and the post games, they will see the prayer circles that happen on a regular basis. And that's when here these competitors have been trying to kill each other, and all of a sudden are now arms around each other in prayer. There's also the interviews that take place where the players will be thankful to their God for the success that they've had. And you hear that all the time. I mean, candidly, I have a little bit of issue with that. And maybe the answer needs to come from somebody like you, beyond me, because I believe there are people of faith on the losing team. And why was a decision made that this team got to win when the other team did not get to win? So I struggle with that on a regular basis, but that's how deep the faith is by some of these players. And when they are successful, they will then think it to be because God wanted them to be successful. Well, again, what about the other guys on the other side of the field?
If I was the chaplain on that team, I would say it's the faith is the strength to handle whatever has been handed to us. Dave Sims, a great broadcaster, is actually now the voice of the Yankees, he said the same thing. What about the guy in left field that just dropped the ball but allowed the home run to come in? So
Right.
I completely agree with you as well. So the last question is life after football. What does football prepare? Because football is not a normal retirement age at 23 or 24 or 25, maybe 30 if they're lucky, and Brady's just an anomaly. What does life look like after football, and what lessons can you carry on so that they can be taught to others to have others be successful?
Well, there are a number of lessons to be learned while you're playing the game, the teamwork notion. You know, there's the old saying, there's no I in team. You have to learn to work with others. And no matter what you do, whether you're playing football or you get into the corporate world afterwards, you have to be part of a team. There's discipline. You have to be able to, through time management and all, handle all these responsibilities that come your way. And then there's a notion of overcoming challenges. You're always going to have challenges. Now, how you deal with them determines how you're successful. And there's plenty of others beyond that, but those are three that come to mind. And then for after football, it's a matter of how you prepare and what you want to do. Jeffrey always knew that he wanted to go into media and broadcast, and so he prepared for that, went to NFL boot camp, and is now is very successful in that regard. And so you have to be prepared. But the sad part to me is a lot of the players aren't prepared for that next level. Right? I think even going back into college, there should be a course about what is life like when they go to college. And then in college, for those athletes, a course about how you handle your fame, your notoriety, if that's your course, and how you handle your money, because people are going to be coming and knocking on your door and wanting some of that, and so forth. And there's no preparation there. And since football, the average career is three years or so, you don't make life-sustaining money typically in 3 or 4 years. So you're going to have to face reality.
Amazing lessons on the field, but most importantly off the field, and allowing us to peer into a world that we usually don't peer into until the TV is turned on Sunday mornings. Truly an honor to have Lee Schwartz, author of Raising Giants, My Extraordinary Journey with 2 NFL sons, a friend of Sinai Temple. We look forward to what will come next in your journey, but of course in the Schwartz brothers, the Schwartz sons, and just know the pride that you have in your son is multiplied by the pride that the Jewish community has and continues to have in the Schwartz brothers and their journeys through the NFL. Lee Schwartz, Raising Giants, wonderful to have you on Rabbi on the Sidelines. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.